So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of IATEFL from Harrogate. Thank you for joining us again. I hope you're ready for another, well, I'll say fun, loosely, day from the conference. You can see over there the team are ready to talk to us. Hi, Chris. Welcome back. Chris, we've got your suggestion talk, and we're going to try and get the names on the screen today. Hi, Susan. Welcome back. Glad to see you again today. Obviously, join in to let us know how you are as we go along. So day 2 of the conference. Can't believe it's day 2 already. We have got coming up in the show. We've got some interviews. We're going to start with the storytellers in a few minutes, and then we're going to learn a little bit about VR. Then we're going to talk to some of our scholarship winners from the day. On video, we've got some reflections from day 1. And the plenary is already uploaded. So yesterday we had those hiccups getting there. The plenary will go out live. It's exactly where you're watching this at 5:30. I've set it to go. I'm confident it'll go out properly this year. So hello, Václav. Hello, everybody. Let's go over to the studio and talk to the ladies, and then we'll get into our first interview. Hi, ladies. How are you today?
We're very well. We're well, aren't we? Yeah, we're right. Absolutely. We were just standing here having a little chat about, reflecting. Oh, sorry, Richard Rodney. Reflecting on day 1 and what we enjoyed from the conference.
Yes.
And I was just saying that for me, I think that the idea of sustainability is now a bit more tangible. I know it was brought up last year, but I left feeling a little bit unsure what exactly that meant in ELT. Whereas now I'm like, okay, I actually think it makes a bit more sense to me, and I know what I should and shouldn't be doing. And yeah, I just feel a bit more in the know in terms of sustainability. What about you, Anka? What was your takeaway from yesterday?
Well, I can't really compare it to last year, of course, but aside from loving talking about sustainability all day, I absolutely love this one session that I could attend, because it's brilliant doing all this, but just sitting back in a session, watching a really good session of my lovely colleague here, and actually learning loads about Gen Z, that was absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I think that what I took on from yesterday is that it's been a year, and it always feels like a community, like a family. So every year you go to a Christmas holiday or Easter holiday or annual holidays, and you meet your family. So this is what IATEFL looks like and feels like as well. So you meet people, you talk to people, and then you say, oh, hi, I remember you. How have you been? And then you just chat about what's happened in a year. So it's absolutely brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can't believe it's been a year.
Yes. Sean, what about you?
In the stream, I guess what I've learned in this year is don't have 3 people in the studio at a time. So, hi, I'm Nita joining us from Senegal. Alenka, which hopefully you've seen. We've talked a lot about sustainability, and we're having this really interesting question, man, because obviously, if you didn't join us yesterday, the new member of the team, Anka, is here to talk to all the to people who are talking about sustainability, and we're having this debate of how much people actually understand what sustainability in ELT means. So, if you've got a thought, drop it into the chat box, because it's kind of, I don't think we were going to be when we asked the question, I assumed we were going to get an answer, and it's really we're not there. If you're not sure, if you're not seeing this yesterday, by the way, I'm in the middle, so I'm here. This is where all the computers are. Then they're there on my left. This is the camera going out, and what you can see behind them is the exhibition. And then over there, and you'll see them in a minute, there's the sitting studio, and the storytellers will come in a minute. So while we get ready to listen to them, let's hear some more reflections from day 1.
Jun Muhammad Ramdhani. I'm from Indonesia, but I'm doing PhD at University of New South Wales right now. And yesterday was great because this is my first time coming to IATEFL. It connected me to all different scholars and practitioners over the world. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kate, and I'm originally from Ukraine. And yesterday was lovely. It's lovely being back in the ELT world in a face-to-face setting. And I also went to a lovely session about how to ask questions, which actually make people do more and reflect more. That was great.
Hi, my name's Abby, and I'm from England, but I now live in Belgium. And something that I really enjoyed yesterday was how friendly people were, and how you can just talk to anyone about the different topics that you're looking at, the different workshops, and collaborate with them as well.
Hi, I'm Helen from Celtic English Academy in Cardiff, and I came yesterday on Tuesday. I enjoyed everything really, but just seeing loads of people here is real buzz, and probably that's the best thing about it.
Hi, my name's Mike. I'm from England, It's wonderful to be back here at IATEFL. Saw some wonderful sessions yesterday, but the best thing is catching up with old friends I haven't seen for a long time.
Hi everyone, I'm Anna and I came from Dubai, originally from New Zealand, and I had a fabulous first day at the IATEFL. First of all, some excellent talks. I think I haven't seen a talk that I didn't enjoy. And second thing, possibly the most important thing, all these people, meeting old friends and making new friends. So yeah, wonderful. I'm looking forward to day 2.
All right, and hello again from the other side of the studio. Speaking of the IATEFL family and the IATEFL community, last year I had the chance to be introduced and to interview David Heathfield, who is a master storyteller, and he captivated us with his stories this year in the mini videos that he sent us. So David, welcome back.
Oh, it's great to be back. It's great to be back, Georgia.
Excellent. And also you have brought Sanya Raskovich with you.
We've come along together.
Yes, we've come along together this year.
Excellent. Sanya, welcome to the IATEFL family.
Thank you.
So how did you two meet?
Well, Sanya's not new to the IATEFL family. Sanya's been to the conference before, but it's the first time since we met each other that we're meeting. I met Sanya in person after getting to know Sanya quite well online. Sanya did one of my CREST courses, Creative and Engaging Storytelling for Teachers. In fact, the very first course that I ran at the height of the pandemic in 2020, I thought I'm going to create a course for teachers around the world. I'm not traveling, they're not traveling. Let's do a course online. That was the kickoff. I think that was the first time I met you, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. But actually, I did 2 courses with him, the CREST one and then Beyond the CREST. And I'm preparing to get the 3rd one soon.
Excellent.
But it's the first time we met, actually not online, offline. Yes.
So Sanya, what has attracted you to storytelling?
Well, I've been telling stories for a very long time. Long before taking this course, I took some other courses, and I've been telling stories to my children in school, my students, for as long as I teach, and that's 27 years. And yes, I'm not that young. So during the pandemic, we were closed at our homes, and I found on the internet that David was doing that course. I still have the book at home, so I read the book, and when I saw that he has a course, I just had to, join in.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful. And David, what about you? What inspired you first to become a storyteller?
Oh, it's really hard to put your finger on it. It's like every time I answer that question, the answer comes out differently. Is it my dad singing songs and making up stories, sitting on the end of the bed and in the room that I share with my younger sister? I'm the 3rd of 4. I've got 2 older sisters. My dad made up stories when he got home from work, which was often quite late. Or was it getting into drama when I was 30? I did a lot of theatre, and a lot of the kind of theatre we were doing, you could call it storytelling theatre. There was a lot of improvisation, a lot of interaction with the audience, and I learned a lot from that context. And then very good friends within that world were also storytellers. That's interesting.
Yes.
And then it crept into my teaching little by little by little. I had one story for a long time. Maybe 3 years, I only had one story. When you start, you just have one story, and then you have 2 stories, and now I've got a lot of stories. And the thing I love is learning stories from students and from teachers that I meet. Always learning new stories.
You know what's interesting, and that's a good question for both of you as well. Do you think that storytelling is still going strong in language teaching? Because I find that sometimes students, especially the younger generations who have got a very short span attention, might think that the stories are too long or it's too difficult. What do you think?
My experience is that students focus for longer on storytelling than any other activity. I'm just going to ask Sanya,
Yeah, that's right. You just have to adapt it to them, and engage them in the storytelling, make them become the part of the story, to do something. They have to participate in storytelling, and then it's not long. It's never long. It can be short. Sometimes they ask, "Oh, that's it? why not longer? Can we do it again? Or something like that, yes.
Yeah, my experience, particularly, well, I do both personal storytelling and telling folk tales. And in both cases, what I notice is that students, like I said, will focus for longer, and also when they tell. Like if they're talking and you ask them to talk about something, typically an utterance might be a few seconds, or it might be 30 seconds. When they're ready to retell or learn to tell a story, very often you're finding that students, even at a low level, their utterances will average 2-3 minutes. And that's an extraordinary thing. And I've only ever known that happen when students are telling stories.
Of course. So, David, last year, and Sonia, that's something for you to know as well. David gave me a story of the big salmon that we had in Belfast at the IATEFL conference last year, and you told us the story.
You're mixing me up with Alan Hall, because I was with Alan Hall from Ireland, who was with me last year, and Alan told the salmon of knowledge.
Oh, absolutely, but we did talk about the salmon, though.
Absolutely,
yeah,
we did talk about the salmon.
But have you got the story for us this year?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I have got a story.
Excellent. Would you like to share it?
I'm going to tell you a story that I've only just learned. I always love telling fresh stories. And I'll give you a little bit of background. So one of the many teachers I've worked with is Manuela Kelly-Calzini, who's also part of the IATEFL family. Yesterday she was online. Are you there, Manuela? You'll be catching up later. Manuela is a brilliant storyteller, and she does a lot of mentoring and coaching. And there's a girl called Kenza. And Kenza lives in Italy. She's 15, and her family is Moroccan. And Kenza comes to the World Storytelling Cafe every Tuesday. Look up the World Storytelling Cafe, young international storytellers. And every Tuesday she tells us a new story that she's learned from her mother. And us storytellers, we sit there with our jaws dropping because we've never heard the stories she's telling before. She's telling Juha stories, which are the same as Nasruddin or Joha. And there are hundreds of Joha stories, but we've never heard the story she's telling. And the World Storytelling Cafe are going to turn her stories into a book. And I want to tell you the story that she told last week, and it's just a wonderful story. So here we go. So Joha, the wise fool, lived in a small house next to a great grand house. And in that grand house lived his rich and powerful neighbor. But this neighbor was mean-spirited, selfish, so frugal. He would spend none of his money. And one day, Joha said to his neighbor, "Why don't you spend the money on other people, or at least even on yourself?" And the friend said, "Why would I spend my money? Look how it shines." Well, Joha, one day the neighbor asked him if he would lend the neighbor his donkey. So Joha freely lent his donkey to his greedy neighbor. And his neighbor took that donkey, and at the end of the day, when he returned the donkey, he said to Joha, "You owe me 1 dinar. "I owe you a dinar," said Joha. "You borrowed my donkey, and I didn't ask for any money, and you're asking me to pay you a dinar?" "Yes," said the neighbor. "While your neighbor was working hard for me, your donkey got hungry. So I had to buy 1 dinar's worth of grass for your donkey to eat. So give me the dinar." Well, Joha took the dinar and threw it at the neighbor. And afterwards, Joha thought, I need to get rid of this person. I need to get free of this greedy neighbor. He's making my life a misery. So Joha had a plan, and he found a beautiful hat for sale. Joha bought the hat, put it on, and then he went to the best eating house in the whole of the town, and he booked a table for 2 for that night. And then he went to the fruit seller, and he paid in advance, as he had done for the restaurant, for a huge bag of the best quality fruit. And then he went to the donkey stall, and he paid in advance for the finest donkey. Well, that evening, he walked past his friend's house, his neighbor's house, I should say. And the neighbor saw him and said, "Joha, is that a new hat you're wearing?" "Oh, yes," said Joha. "This hat brings me good fortune. It's my lucky hat." "What do you mean, lucky?" "Do you want to see?" said Joha. "Are you hungry? Are you paying?" Of course, said Johar, come with me. And they went to the eating house and they sat down and they had the most lavish meal. There was tagine and herbs and spices and all the most wonderful sweet delicacies. And when they had finished, Johar stood up from the table and began to leave the restaurant. And the restaurant owner bowed. Well, of course, we know that Johar had already paid. But the neighbor said, aren't you going to pay? Johar touched his new hat and smiled at the restaurant owner, who bowed gracefully, and Johar left. You didn't pay for the meal. It's my lucky hat, said Johar. Can you say that? It's my lucky hat. Come with me. And they went to the fruit cellar, although it was already evening, and Johar asked the fruit seller to fill a bag full of the best fruit. It was filled with lemons and oranges and figs and dates, the best quality fruit. And when the bag was full, Johar began to walk away. And the neighbors, you didn't pay for the fruit. Johar touched his lucky hat and he said, it's my lucky hat. Then they went to the donkey stall. And immediately the donkey stall holder led the best donkey out to Johar. Is this the donkey you want? That one, said Johar. And he began to lead the donkey away. And Johar touched his hat, and the neighbor said, aren't you going to pay? Didn't pay for the donkey? And Johar said, it's my lucky hat. Well, the neighbor couldn't believe it. He said to Johar, that hat, I'm interested in having that hat. I'm a rich man. I will buy that hat from you. It's not for sale, said Johar. It's not for sale. But please let me buy the hat. Oh, I'll give you anything for it. Anything, said Johar. That fine house that you have next to mine, I'll exchange the hat for the house. Well, the neighbor scratched his head and thought, well, with this lucky hat, I can get 3 big houses. Very well. First move out. So the neighbor moved out of his grand house, and Johar then presented him with the lucky hat. The neighbor went away. I don't know what happened to that mean-spirited neighbor, but I can tell you that Johar was free from that miserable, mean-spirited neighbor. So as Kenza has taught us in this story, thanks Kenza, and thanks to your mother, it's not worth being mean. Be generous.
Oh, wonderful. That was lovely. Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you very, 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 very much both for joining us. And then, of course, you have done some videos with stories for IATEFL as well.
That's right. Yeah,
Excellent.
I mean, I've learned so many, you could call them very tiny short tales, but tales that are packed full of wisdom, a bit like that one. And I've been sharing them a lot over the last few years. Mostly stories I've learned from people, from teachers, from children. I mean, that's how we learn stories, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your story as well. And one of David's stories is coming up next. So thank you for...
The story that you're about to hear, well, you'll discover it very soon. But Sanya's friend, Sanya, who comes from Serbia, has a student called Vuk. And Vuk, when I met him online during the pandemic, was 9 years old. He must be about 11 years old now, from Serbia. And he told me this incredible story. So Sanya, who's here at the conference, her student Vuk, I think she's still her student. Listen to the story I learned from Vuk. It's incredible and a little bit dark.
Oh.
There was
Thanks,
once
George.
a
Stay
king
tuned. Thank you very much.
who came with his army to the end of the world. And there at the edge they found darkness, utter darkness. They were afraid. But the king said, we will go on. How will we find our way back? Then one had an idea. We should leave the young foals here tied at the edge of the darkness and ride on their mothers, the mares, into the darkness. They will find their way back to their young. They did this, riding on into the terrible darkness. For a long time they rode. They felt great fear. When they came to the end of the darkness, they got down from their horses. They could feel they were standing on large pebbles. Then they heard a strange, inhuman voice. Those of you who take a pebble will regret it. Those of you who do not take a pebble will regret it. Some of the soldiers took a pebble, and some of those soldiers did not. Then they climbed on the mares and rode back. And sure enough, the mares found their way back to their young foals at the edge of the darkness. Now safe, the soldiers looked at the pebbles that some of them had taken. They found that those pebbles were huge diamonds. Their fear was too great to return into the darkness. Those who had taken no pebble regretted, and those who had taken one regretted that they had not taken more. This story was told to me by a 9-year-old boy called Vuk Prestojevic from Serbia.
Okay, we've heard lots about telling stories, and now it's time to spin the wheel again. And I'm joined by Anna and by Tutu, wonderful assistants that are going to spin the wheel. Anna, can I ask you to go first? Oh, that was a good spin. What's your question? What's your best tip for new teachers?
Tricky one, because I've got so many tips, as you know, but I think one of them definitely is to ask for support. If you're not sure if you're doing the right thing, if you just want an activity and not sure how to set it up, or you need a new idea, don't be afraid to ask other people for help, because I think that community we have is so empowering and so important, and you can learn so much from each other.
Absolutely, that's brilliant advice. Tutu, what about you? Do you have any advice for new teachers? Tips?
Well, for me, one of the tips will be to relax as well. Because I think as a new teacher, sometimes we're so stressed and concerned about what will go on in our class. But I think the best thing is to breathe and relax. I think that will be my first one of the tips. Perfect. Oh, yes. Ooh.
What makes a good lesson?
Well, I think there are a lot of things that can make good lessons, but one of the things will be engagement. So for me, the good lesson is when students are engaged in a task, talking to each other. So to me, engagement.
And I think I'm just going to go and connect to that, but motivation, for example, that willingness to communicate. If students are engaged, that leads to motivation. They're really getting into the language. They really want to use it, and they get excited about learning because, okay, learning is hard work. But I think it's also really important that they feel they want to do it, because then it really sticks. So yeah, engagement, motivation.
Thank you both very much. Useful tips. Thank you. Anna, go run free and grab your Prosecco. I think that's what you're looking forward to. Thank you very much for joining us. Cupcakes and Prosecco. See, it's all happening here in the exhibition centre. But I'm very glad to be joined by Tutu. Tutu, you are doing, or you did a talk today. You did a talk yesterday. But before we get to the talk, can you just tell us a bit about yourself, your background, where do you work, what's your context?
Well, I'm originally from Myanmar, but now I'm based in Manchester. Previously, I worked in the British Council Myanmar as a teacher and a young learner coordinator. And now in Manchester, I work for in a school called Into Manchester. I'm teaching English for academic purposes to students.
Okay, lovely. And is this your first conference, or have you been to IATEFL before?
Well, funny story. Last year, I was a steward
in
IATEFL in Belfast. And I was doing a master's last year in the University of Manchester.
Okay.
And now I completed my master's, and now I'm here as a delegate and a speaker.
Oh, fantastic. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Did you do a master's in EdTech or did you do it in teaching?
Well, I did both. I did a master's in educational technology and TESOL at the University of Manchester. Yes.
Which is perfect. And that also explains your talk that you did yesterday. So Tutu did a talk about adapting materials for a speaking course in virtual reality. Let me ask you first of all, where did the inspiration come from? When did you decide, okay, I'm going to work with VR and we're going to do speaking?
Well, during the course, I had this module called Multimedia Design Development. In one of the lessons, the tutor brought a VR headset and asked us to try it on.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried it on, and I found it very interesting and engaging because I was in the environment fully immersed. And I thought, maybe I could do something about it in my lesson as well. Maybe I will try to experiment it. And from that, I got the inspiration. So I decided to do my dissertation on using adapting materials to teach speaking in a virtual reality environment.
Okay, and that was the first time that you put the headset on?
Yes, it was my very first time.
So it's one of these things that if you have never tried it, then it's very hard to describe just how immersive the environment actually is. Okay, so you decided that you were going to work with speaking.
Yes.
Why speaking as opposed to the other skills using virtual reality?
Well, to me, if for a language speaker, speaking is the most challenging one as well, because when you're speaking, you have to tap into different cognitive processes, which is very demanding. And so how can we reduce this cognitive demand? So it's by tapping into your knowledge about language topic, monitor yourself, things like that. And you could achieve this through automaticity, which is talked by Thornbury as well, Scott Thornbury. And so to reduce the cognitive load, you can achieve through automaticity, which can be achieved by repetitive, communicative, and authentic activities. And for those things, I think VR can help enhance learners' learning. So that's why speaking and a virtual reality environment.
Okay, we'll talk a bit more perhaps about virtual reality and language learning, but tell me first of all, how did you adapt the materials? What materials did you start with and what did you end with?
So I looked up a lot of materials. So I chose British Council resources because they are freely available. And so I've got this, I'm going to give an example. So one of the lessons is about cooking. It's called Cooking and TV Chefs. And it's about reading some about British chefs and then recipes and learning utensils, vocabulary related to utensils.
Okay.
So that's the materials. And to adapt the materials, I thought about the principles. What kind of principles should materials follow? So based on those principles, I thought about the materials, whether the lesson has followed these principles or not. Then I thought about the approach as well. What approach would be the best suitable for VR environment? And task-based.
Okay, okay, lovely. In case anyone's not familiar with TBL, task-based learning, could you briefly tell us what that means?
Well, task-based learning involves 3 parts: pre-task, task, and then post-task. The aim of the task-based learning is to enable learners to be exposed to both language and use. So imagine you're in the class and before you, for example, imagine you're going to, as a learner, you're going to organize a school party.
Yeah.
So that would be the task. Okay. Yeah. Organize a school party. So as a group, you have to decide what, for example, food are you going to cook? So that would be the task. And the task should be meaningful and authentic.
Which it is, because we'll often find ourselves in situations where we have to organize something. Yep, like this. Okay.
Yes. And so that's the task. And before the task, the learners should do some preparation activities or strategic planning so that once they do the task, they can be ready. Then after that, post-task, which is about reflection, task repetition. And I also met Jane Willis, who
Big
is
TBL
yes.
person there. Yeah,
Yesterday.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I find this fascinating. Why did you choose a TBL lesson frame as opposed to PPP or, I don't know, any form of discovery learning, anything like that? Why did you go for TBL?
Well, like I've said, with task-based learning, I think learners are given opportunities to be engaged in meaningful, interactive tasks. Where sometimes PPP can be good to some extent, but with speaking, with task-based learning, as learners are doing the task, they are monitoring them, they are speaking, and they're tapping into the language and vocabulary and things like that. So to me, I think task-based learning makes sense a lot to improve speaking.
I completely agree with you, and I think as well in the virtual learning, virtual reality environment, it isn't. If we do the things the same way as we do, I think in the classroom, then we're not using VR to its full potential. And I think using a task-based approach in VR is probably the most effective way of teaching or helping learners with language. What would you say to people who say, well, I don't really see the point in VR. How is it different to being online on a computer? What are the benefits? What would you say?
Well, the first thing I would ask teachers to do is to actually go on as a learner in VR environment. For example, University of Sheffield right now offer one free English lesson where you go into a learning environment as a learner. But I think you have to have a headset though.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is to be immersed in the environment yourself. And also, right now you can learn other languages like Spanish and French on this website called eMaster.online, which is the software that I also used in my dissertation. And so my first tip is to go into the environment yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Then,
try it out, yes.
Then the second step is to talk to teachers who have taught in VR before. So I think if you find, for example, on LinkedIn, I think you can find lots of teachers now who have taught in VR. And the final one is to think about the pedagogy as well before technology. How are you going to use the tool to enhance learning? How will you complement your lessons?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's the key, because as I say, I'm not convinced that you should go into VR in the same way that you might do teaching language in a classroom, because it won't utilize the technology. Did you pilot the material that you adapted?
Yes, I did.
And how did it go down with the learners? Did it function really well?
Well, the first time it was a bit chaotic because, with tech, when we started teaching Zoom, the first lesson was like, oh, what's going on? So there was there was a huge cognitive demand on both teachers and learners. So that happened. But after 2 lessons, learners really enjoyed to be in the VR environment. They were like talking a lot compared to physical classroom, compared to Zoom as well. They found the interaction really meaningful.
Do you think, and I mean, this is potentially anecdotal without having done the research, but do you think that it's because you can't actually physically see each other? You can hear each other, but you're in your own avatar, and you could potentially be somebody else in the environment. Do you think that lowers your affective filter?
Yes, and because they feel like using the avatar, their face is not on it, like there. So I think I really totally agree with you when you say it reduces affective filter, because you don't feel nervous anymore.
So this is why I think the environment could be really quite effective.
Yes.
Yeah, for the learners. Absolutely. Yes. Okay. Do you always need to have a headset? Does everybody need to have a headset in order to use VR?
Well, as a teacher, you will be on desktop VR, and learners are in. If you talked about my lesson, learners were in headset.
Yeah.
But now they can also access through desktop VR.
Just in case anyone's not too familiar with desktop VR, could you help us with what it means?
Well, it means you enter into a VR environment using your laptop rather than using the headset. So it's one of the types of VR as well.
Absolutely. So that makes it slightly more accessible as well. Not necessary that you always have a headset.
Although one thing to point out is to think of the limitations as well. Like the prolonged use can cause dizziness, so you need to think about that. And right now there are not a lot of research yet about limitations, but now things are I mean, there has been a research going on to talk about the limitations and how it could impact on people.
Well, so this is perfect. So if anyone wants to try it themselves and do a bit of action research and perhaps come back to the next conference in Brighton next year and talk about the limitations, that would be fantastic.
That would be
Tutu,
very
all the
interesting.
best with your projects, and thank you very much for talking to us this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, it's an interesting interview, wasn't it? It's always interesting to see how people are using VR. Thank you very much, Tutu. Thank you very much, Nikki. Hi, welcome. You are on IATEFL Live. We're coming to you on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. This is live from Harrogate 2023, and it's the afternoon show. We're here for probably another hour and a little bit, bringing you some interviews and news from around the conference. If you've joined us late, then you've already missed the storytelling for today, so you might want to catch up with that later on. We had some great stories from David and Sanya, and we've just been listening to telling us about her talk on virtual reality. You can, if you notice people moving behind Nikki and Tutu, that's because we're in the exhibition hall, and that's what you can see behind her. But we're going to go to the other side of the studio now, and Georgia, you've got our next guest. So let me just bring you in, Georgia, and over to you. All yours, Georgia.
Lovely. Hello again, everybody. So I'm very happy to have with me today Liam Vin from Language Cert. So Liam, welcome to IATEFL.
Thank you very much.
How has the conference been so far for you?
It's been very good. We kind of sponsored an opening reception on the first evening. There was a lot of people there, and there was some very kind of a lot of attention what was going on, people interested in what IATEFL was doing, and I think also David Crystal was there, said some interesting words as usual, got people motivated. So far, and I've been following some sessions. It's been very good.
Wonderful. So tell us a few things about Language Cert for the people who don't know about Language Cert.
Sure. Well, Language Cert basically is part of the parent company is PeopleCert. PeopleCert has been doing business and IT examinations probably since 2000 or something. And then since 2015, they started doing language exams, taking up the old IP of City and Guilds exams that people would have known before. And so we've been building and working on language exams pretty much since 2015.
Of course. Now you've mentioned City and Guilds. As a Greek, I have taken City and Guilds myself.
Okay.
What has changed since like lots and lots of years ago when I first took it?
Well, obviously, I mean, I think the exams, I think there are certain principles of the old City and Guilds exams which we look to keep. One of those was very much about keeping a focus on communicative use of language. The whole idea about testing, everyone does it in a slightly different way, but we look to test against the Common European Framework levels. But the Common European Framework levels, the descriptors, leave quite a lot of scope, but they're talking really about what you can do, how you can show that. And different testing bodies go about that maybe in slightly different ways, but we try and keep the focus on a kind of real communicative use of language. And I think that element has stayed from the old City and Guilds exam. But obviously we look to, like all exam boards, we look to evolve, keep changing what we're doing, and move on.
This is very interesting because I've always wondered what the important criteria are for an assessment, a language assessment organization. So what are the important criteria that you take into consideration?
Well, I think the fundamental thing is that people, for various needs, study probably above all, but also work, and now increasingly also migration. People need to demonstrate a level of English. They need to demonstrate they have, they know how to use English in different ways, normally in all four skills. And I think the important thing there is that people are looking for a qualification that tests those level against common standards, so that you're all playing on the same kind of field. And then obviously those examinations need to test appropriately so you can show your level of English. And most importantly, those examinations need to be recognized by universities, by authorities. We're obviously regulated by Ofqual, etc. But you need to be recognized by the appropriate governments, by the appropriate universities. So yes, you need to show what you can do with English, but obviously for an exam board, it's very important that those certifications are recognized by the appropriate bodies and institutions.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting what you're mentioning about how exams are changing. And what I want to ask you is this. So as a teacher myself, we always see that our classrooms and our materials are getting more and more digitalized, and this is very important for us to know as well. What are the challenges for a language assessment organization in this increasingly digital world?
I think I've been following a lot of discussions recently at different conferences about the effect of technology or digitalization and impact on the classroom. I still I go back a long way. I used to be a teacher. I worked for the British Council stuff. And I remember years ago reading a famous quote that any teacher that could be replaced by a computer should be, in the sense that, technology can offer lots of things. You can do things with it, but it should very much help the teacher, help the learners in different way. I think digitalization has always been, technology has helped a lot the learner, and it helps to have a more eclectic approach. I believe very much that you need different approaches. Not everyone learns in the same way. I used to say there's no such thing as a thick student. And I think you just need to find the right route. And I think anyone, if they apply the right amount of motivation and time, you can learn a language. I'm currently doing modern Greek lessons on a Saturday morning, thanks from People Sir, which is very good. I think you need to keep changing. But no, I think it's important. Obviously, in testing, we're looking at digitalization, looking at computer-delivered exams. But often, as you'll find that probably still most people going through the school system, education system, would probably still largely prefer to do paper-based exams. Maybe they're moving to computer-based exams. And we've seen with online exams, online proctored exams, for the moment, that's still very much young adults, maybe 18 plus, people who feel happy using a computer. And I think it'll take time for, you need to be able to take an exam in such a way as you're kind of the way you're used to studying. So if you don't use a computer very much when you're actually studying or at school, you don't get a chance to use it much at school, then I think it's difficult to say, right now you're going to do an exam on a computer. So I think it's important that you have, we make sure we have all three opportunities. You can do paper-based or computer-based. Probably as we go forward, as students get more familiar with using computers in class when they're studying, I think obviously, inevitably it will move. There are all sorts of advantages to computer-based testing, writing, for example. You can go back and check. I mean, you can't use a spell checker, but you can sort of go back, look at what you're doing. So there are certain advantages to, computer-based testing, for example, but students have to be ready for it. And I still think it will take time for students coming through the school system to be ready to do, say, computer-based testing.
Absolutely. And how do you think that the language assessment exams are going to look like in about 5 years from now, for instance?
Well, I think an obvious element that's coming in, some exam boards are using more and more, is artificial intelligence. So the thing is, one of the things that, when you look at all the things I said before, you're looking to do exams that test against criterion levels. You're looking to apply also for high stakes exams, which are very important. You need to make sure they're done in very secure circumstances. Artificial intelligence is being used a lot more in kind of learning materials and preparation for exams, because there's lots of things you can do with artificial intelligence. I think it'll take time before recognizing universities or authorities are prepared to consider those kind of artificial intelligence used, like auto marking, of writing or speaking. It'll be difficult before they use that for high stakes exam. So for the moment, I think it'll be used a lot more medium stakes exams for schools, lower stakes exams, people needing it for work purposes, corporate, university, large groups. I think that will increase more. I definitely think it'll be used, artificial intelligence will be used a lot more in the whole support learning environment. But we've seen with the kind of pandemic and with online proctoring, high stakes exams is a very kind of sensitive area. People immediately try and kind of cheat, get around them. So you have all sorts of challenges. All exam boards have been through that. I know I've worked for one before. And you have to look at how you adapt to that and change. So with, I think, definitely looking more at things like online delivery and availability, increasing access, obviously, to different parts of the world as well, through technology. But with high stakes exam, it's fundamental that everything you do, whatever the technology, has to be really secure, done in a secure way, so that someone producing a certificate, really does have that level of English going to study or work or whatever.
Of course. And how does Language Cert respond to the challenges and the changes of our students and our language testers as well?
Well, I think obviously a lot of the most recent challenges, to a certain extent, all the exam boards had lots of challenges, obviously, during the pandemic. Language Cert had a certain advantage in the sense that we've had online proctoring for exams since 2014 for our business and IT exams. So we had actually planned to roll out online proctoring about April 2020. So that was that helped us a lot. It helped us move very quickly, grow quickly. The challenge of that, anything for an exam body, is that if the more demand you get, you have to scale up all your operations, the whole back-end systems, whatever. You have to scale everything up, and you also have to look at how you respond to needs. I think we initially dealt with that very well. We had challenges for security. We've dealt with those, I think, very well. But also you need to look at needs. And one of the things, up until recently, we had single-level ESOL exams for people wanting to go and study abroad, particularly around C1, and other exams like LTE. Now we're looking at doing versions specifically. There's a lot of requests for more academic content. So from June, we're doing a concordant study at the moment, but we're hoping to roll out globally Language Cert Academic, which is offering chance for people to actually do, very academic focused content. So particularly thinking about going to study. So responding to that challenge, it's a single multi-level exam. So you take one exam, it reports at multi-levels. And so I think that's responding to an identified need. This information we've had back either from the candidates or particularly from universities. And at the same time, therefore, we'll also be releasing globally Language Cert General, which is particularly for the migration purposes. So probably looking eventually to move that over to our offering for CELT for people going to live, work or study in the UK. So I think, those are new changes we're making for the exams. One final one, if I can add, is also that we work a lot with schools. And again, thinking about specific needs of specific groups, we worked on specific materials for schools for a big tender we had in Spain for Madrid. And so we're probably looking to roll out latter part of the year, start to roll out versions of ESOL for schools. So from A1 to B2, meaning kind of for students under 17. So looking at material that's more appropriate. And I think by the time we have that for the schools offer, academic in general, we will have a very clear offer for all the main specific areas of need. And I think that's the main thing you have to do as an exam board, is what are the key needs that candidates want, the receiving institutions need, and therefore trying to provide that as appropriately as possible.
This is very important, isn't it, to respond to the challenges and the changes. So moving to IATEFL, to the conference, Language Cert has organized some events. What are the events that Language Cert has organized?
Well, we've also, obviously, as one of the sponsors, we were looking to do some various events. We were lucky enough to host the opening reception on Monday evening, which I think was really good. And that was really an update from the president of IATEFL, and also patron David Crystal was there, and have a chance to also afterwards network, meet people. Obviously, that's important. But also we've done, a colleague of mine, Corina, did a talk this afternoon on computer adaptive testing. That was quite good, and we had a good audience there. And Kieran Donaghy is doing a talk for our sponsored by us later on today on cultivating a kind of culture of care in more look at teaching engagement. So that's later on this afternoon, 5:30, I think. And I think we've also got a pop-up on someone there tomorrow. We're trying to maximize the opportunities. But I think the main thing is to be available. We're here at the stand. My colleagues are trying to get around, follow the other talks as well, which is always difficult. You want to find out what other people are talking about. But so far, it's great. There's a lot of people here. It's very busy. It's great.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Liam, thank you very, very much for your time today.
Thank you.
And I will see you at the conference. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Did you know that Harrogate is home to the oldest sweet shop in England? Established in 1827, the sweet shop has been delighting visitors for nearly 2 centuries. The shop is a true time capsule, with its wooden shelves, glass jars and the original fittings still in place. Visitors can choose from a range of sweets, such as the classic boiled sweet, or toffees, fudges and licorice. The shop even offers a range of sweets that have been popular since Victorian times, including the famous Yorkshire mixture, a combination of mint and fruit-flavoured sweets that has been a favourite of locals for generations. For anyone with a sweet tooth, a visit to the oldest sweet shop in England is a must-see attraction for visitors to Harrogate.
And it had to be the sweet shop ad that went in today, because we have a sweet shop in the centre today, right in the middle. There is a lovely old-fashioned sweet shop. So had you been here in Harrogate, this is the bit where it should be. If you were here, you could join in. It's amazing amounts. It's all the retro sweets that I remember from my childhood. So if you're not familiar with this, is a cola cube, and over here we've got a little blackjack and a fruit salad. And it's a lovely. I'll put a poster on the social a picture on social media later on. But it's a lovely card. But the best one is the flying saucer, which if you're not British, you probably have no idea. But this is full of sherbet, so it's a great little sugar hit. Because what you need in day 2 of IATEFL is coffee and sugar, just to get you through where we're going. So welcome if you're just joining into the stream. Hi, as a lot of people come in. Hi, Mohammed in Senegal. Hi, Brazil. How you doing? Let's just remember that this is the live show. We're almost halfway through today's live show. About another hour to go. We're actually flying through it. Interviews everywhere today. At 5:30 UK time. So the live show will go until 5, then 5:30 UK time in the social media channel on which you're watching this. So that's Facebook, YouTube or LinkedIn. You'll be able to watch today's plenary, which is unbelievable, by the way. If you haven't seen, if you weren't at the conference, it is an unbelievable plenary, and Divya's plenary is coming up at 5:30 UK time. And after the plenary, we'll do some of the pre-recorded interviews that we have been doing during the morning before we go live. So tonight we've got Rachel Roberts, who in fact we recorded last week, and then we've got some of the pre-recorded interviews that we made over the last 2 days. So Ben Nesmith, we've got Ashraf, who is a scholarship winner coming up, and Maria Willoughby from a teacher trainer who's also going to be talking about the portal. But right now on the other side of the studio, we've got Anchor joining us. It's about an hour ago since we last saw you in the broadcast, Anchor. So Anchor, who have you got over there with us? Let us find out.
So I'm here today with Janice Bland. For the people who don't know you, could you quickly introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Okay. Am I looking in the right direction to the people? Hi, people. Great. I'm Janice Bland. I'm actually based in Germany a lot of the time, but professionally, I am connected to Norway. So I'm in teacher education in Norway. I work right up in the Arctic Circle, Nord University. And I am supporting future teachers of English who are going into primary schools and secondary schools in Norway. And I have a second professorship, but that's in Oslo Met. So I also spend some time in Oslo, which is not quite so far north as you can imagine.
Nice. Sounds cold, but really, really nice. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you today is because you're doing a session tomorrow about picture books and activism. And as you know, I love activism and sustainability. So, of course, we had to talk to you.
You just actually told me that you've actually met Greta Thunberg and you didn't have time to give me any details. And I'm just so jealous of you. Yeah, tomorrow, we'll talk about it afterwards. Tomorrow, I am presenting on 4 picture books, and all of them present activists, young people who can really inspire the young people in the classrooms to really get involved in their learning, their education, and life outside of school. So the 4 activists are Greta Thunberg. There's a picture book about her. Malala, she wrote it herself. She's brilliant. It's an autobiography. Autumn Peltier, who is a water protector in the USA. She's one of the many water protectors who are trying to protect the water. There's precious resource amongst the indigenous communities as well as the rest of the world. And also Louis Braille, who is no longer alive, of course, 19th century, but he invented at the age of 15. These were all so young when they did their amazing things, and some of them are still doing it. But Louis Braille, at the age of 15, invented the Braille, which is this touch code, so that people who have problems with seeing or even are fully blind can actually read and become literate, and that's so important. And he was 15. It's just such an amazing character. These are biographies, picture books, and you can do them in the classroom and inspire the children to go outside, and it's what we call in-depth learning.
So what is in-depth learning, and why is it so important that young learners see inspiring young people?
Because it makes sense for their life in the here and now. I don't like it when we think, and this is true for teenagers, of course, as well, but now we're talking about primary school mostly. I don't like it when they're being told all the time they've got to learn English. It's good for their future.
Yeah.
It's good. It's important right now, so they can connect to people all over the world in all the different countries where if they want to connect, they need to speak English very often, because English is spoken in so many different parts of the world. And also to keep their eye on what the rest of us are doing. Not very good job, unfortunately, as we are very often told. And so they can, what Greta Thunberg inspired, and Fridays for Future, and how much young people are really influencing that.
Definitely. So you're saying it's very important that young people see young people changing the world.
Yes.
And it makes it more important for them to realize they can connect, and that's why they need English.
I'm afraid so. If you look at the placards of these amazing, when they're on a school strike and they go out in all the different countries, in Germany, the Netherlands, the language is always English.
True.
Because they want to reach the world. Yeah.
Very true. And storytelling. You do a lot with storytelling and literature.
Yes. These are picture books, so it's about storytelling. And I've got a conference next year, and I want to mention it in case anybody wants to put in a proposal, because the call for papers is now open, and we're really happy to have proposals from all over the world. It will be in Norway, so it's right up in the north, but Buda will be the European Capital of Culture next year. And it's called Reading for In-Depth English Learning. And it's all about stories. Yes, text in and beyond the classroom. That's the subtitle of the conference. You can just look it up. Just Google Riddle, Reading for In-Depth Learning, RIDEL 2024.
And when is the conference?
It's in May next year.
In May. So anyone who wants to go to Norway in May next year can hand in a proposal
this
please. Month?
Yes, by the end of May. That's the call for papers. It's open until the end of May this year.
Okay, so slightly over a month to hand in a proposal if you want to speak at a conference about storytelling.
Yes.
Very important, and I think very good opportunity as well. I might actually
that's
consider
great.
that.
Yeah, super.
But you're not just working on a conference, are you? Because I know I have
the Clearly Journal, which I'm the editor-in-chief. I don't get. I mean, this is my sort of voluntary work, like you. We all do voluntary work, which is great because we can reach more people than just in our own institutions.
Yeah.
So that's the Clearly Journal is children's literature and English language education. It's open access. And again, you can just Google Clearly Journal, you'll find it. So I'm always happy to have my team. We have obviously a number of us there working on publishing twice a year an open access issue, and there are no publishing charges. It's all free. So anybody who's interested can submit a proposal via the journal website. It has to be connected to children's literature. But that doesn't mean only picture books, graphic novels, young adult literature. It includes young adult literature, of course. But it could also be digital storytelling, or the lyrics of songs, or hip hop. Anything that's connected to stories.
I love this, and I also thank you for this, because what I think IATEFL is all about is opportunities, and these are two fabulous opportunities, I think, for people at home that they can enjoy and use instead of having to come here. So thank you.
Coming here is wonderful, but it's expensive.
It's expensive. It's not always possible to do.
No.
Before we wrap this up, we're looking at the time. I do know you have a book coming out soon.
If you mean this one, it's already published.
Oh,
this one?
Yes.
compelling stories in English for English language learners. I always have to read the title. I never remember titles. Creativity, interculturality, and critical literacy. Yeah, well, it's all about stories and how important that is for making children. Not making is the wrong word. For encouraging children to read, to still enjoy books, touch books. That's so important. Digital textbooks are fantastic, and I think that's how it should go. That books should be, if they're academic books, even course books in schools, should be digital. But actually taking picture books into the classroom and young adult literature, it's still important to actually touch and feel these books. And that's not happening enough. That's why a lot of us still focus on stories. And please, if it's real children's literature, and teachers out there, please bring the real books into the classroom and not everything only digital.
And can you give me a couple of tips for books that you should or could bring into the classroom that
I
are
wish
really
I'd brought
good?
them here. You should have asked me that in advance. I've got some books
Sorry.
tomorrow with me at my talk, but I didn't bring them today. Well, I would, maybe you just think of the books that I'm talking about tomorrow. Malala's Magic Pencil, that's the autobiography. Actually, you can do that in secondary school because obviously there are the issues. She was nearly killed by the Taliban. So it's not really specifically primary school. I've seen it used in secondary school where you can talk about these issues. Greta Thunberg, of course, also the environment, very important in the secondary as well as primary school. The Water Protectors is a wonderful book, and these books have not only amazing pictures. That one won the Caldecott Prize because because of the amazing pictures, but also the poetic text is so important, and that's at more secondary school too, perhaps lower secondary, I would say. And then Louis Braille with quite a lot of verbal text. Again, you can talk with children about whether it's biography, autobiography. Are these stories more real than created stories? It's important issues to talk about regarding critical literacy. But of course, autobiographies are still created. Biographies, the writer still chooses which pictures to show, which verbal text to create. It's still story, and you still need critical literacy. You still need to be aware that it's a choice, a selection. And that's why I would include biography as non-fiction, but non-fiction is still a story.
Very good and very important to make that distinction. Do you have one final tip for anybody at home? Something that if they can't be here today, something they can take away from this interview and use in their classroom or in their daily lives?
Using in the classroom is not, what I was going to say, it's not actually using in the classroom. I was going to say consider becoming a teacher in primary and English teacher in primary and secondary school, because worldwide there are not enough teachers of English now in primary, in state schools, primary and secondary school. There really are not enough. We're crying out. And also more expertise at universities for young learners and teenagers, particularly primary school, at university. We're crying out for more experience of school teaching and then going to university and sharing that with teachers. There's just not enough. So that's a wish. Otherwise, going into the classroom, ask the children. If they enjoy reading it, they are going to talk about it with their peers. Any books they enjoy reading, even if the teacher doesn't. Well, the teacher should really understand that why the book is wonderful. It would help. But the children can perhaps explain it to them. The more that they are into the reading, the more they will take learning, even if it's critical literacy, reading against the text, discovering the issues in that book. Maybe they're only heterosexual relationships, just a binary understanding of gender, just quoting a research paper I just came from, where they were talking about the issue with everything in the course books. It tends to be heteronormative and not a more fluid understanding of gender. I mean, even if that is the case in the young adult literature you are using, you can talk about that in the classroom. You can still read against the text and still enjoy it, and it's still fun for the young people. And I would also say canonical literature has been chosen by somebody, and that's probably a dead white European male, a dweem. Canonical literature, there's plenty of research to show that canonical literature is not better in every case than what young people are reading today. We need to read that against the text too, because there also we will see the men have the the majority of active roles in phonological literature and the women not. And that's also something we just don't accept anymore. So gender issues, race issues is another really important issue, of course. We need to read against the text, whatever we are reading, as well
Very
as
good.
enjoying it.
Yeah. So as a tip for everybody, just ditch whatever you should read according to some. Really think about what it is you want to read and ask your students what they want to read. Lots of opportunities, lots of tips. So thank you. And thank you for your time. There are a number of footprint calculators out there that you can use to find out how big your impact is. How big is your footprint? How many Earths would we need if everybody had your lifestyle? Behind me, you can see the one from the WWF, but you've also got footprintcalculator.org, footprintnetwork.org, and your country is bound to have at least one or two organizations that have their own. And I invite all of you, no, I dare all of you, to take one of those tests and to see how big your impact is. Your negative impact, that is. Because what these sites don't measure is your positive impact. Now, we can talk for hours about how to commute to work and the pros and cons of digital overprinting, for example. And if you're me, you can literally talk for hours about this. But aside from calculating your negative impact and trying to compensate that, how about we also talk about our positive impact? Can you calculate that? What example are we setting? What differences are we making in the lives of our students? What topics do we focus on in our language classes or in our study materials? And if we do this, times the amount of students we see or who see our materials, times the amount of years we've been teaching, how much impact do we have? Now, all superheroes need to use their powers for good. But really, looking at IATEFL, looking at the amount of teachers gathered here, we can change the world. So let's do that.
Hi there, welcome back. It's Anka's, I was going to call her something else, an Anka's sustainability tip of the day. I'm feeling the sugar buzz during the last interview. If you saw me just before the last interview, I was eating lots of sweets and now I'm regretting that. So I'll hand straight over to the other side of the studio where I think we're ready for some scholarship winners, actually. Hi, Georgia.
Hello, Sean. Sean, I have to admit that this is not fair because we do not have the sweets over here as well. So, but we will have our pick later. Yeah, because we need to offer our guests as well. We are talking about Harrogate and sweet, so please help yourselves to sweeten the interview as well. Sorry, I had to.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Oh, very
I
good.
love bad jokes as well. So.
I'm going to take one of these.
No, thank you, later. So I'm very happy to have with me two of our scholarship winners. So ladies first, of course.
Of course.
So we have got Marisol Hernandez. Hello. Welcome to IATEFL. And we have got Tim Fuller.
Thank you.
Welcome to IATEFL.
Thank you. Hello.
Lovely. So for people watching us from home, can you tell us a few things about yourself, Marisol?
Well, as you've said, I'm from Argentina. I'm an English pronunciation teacher. I'm a lecturer in English phonetics and phonology back at home, and an actor.
Wonderful. How do you combine all these?
Well, actually, that is what my research project is about. I've been researching how different acting techniques and exercises can be included in the English pronunciation classroom, especially for pronunciation purposes. So that's why I've won the scholarship.
Oh, lovely. And Jim, let's talk about you. Where are you based and what do you do?
Okay, I can use this one. Well, I'm based in Spain. I am Australian, well, half Australian, half British, and I actually do something a lot less interesting than all the research into phonetics and phonology. But basically, I focus on teacher education, and I'm the director of studies of a private language academy in the north of Spain. Hello to everyone there. But I also work on the Cambridge University Press and Assessment teacher training team in Iberia, and yeah, that's me in a minute.
Wonderful. Jim, I also know you from Sponge ELT.
Yes, I didn't want to have like blatant self-promotion, but yes, I have a blog, Sponge ELT, where I talk about my teacher education and management experiences, and I also interview people from all over the world. Yes.
Lovely. You know what? I read one of your articles. I think it must have been later last year, when you were talking about managers and managing your time as a manager while covering for sick teachers. And I couldn't relate more to that. I forwarded it to all of my fellow managers in my company because I found it really inspiring. So tell me a few things about your blog. So what decisions do you make on your blog about what to write, for example?
Oh, thank you. Also, thank you very much for the comments about that article. I think for many of us going through the pandemic as managers, that was something, a very common theme, covering sick teachers and trying to fill the gaps. Regarding the blog, my decisions, they're kind of ad hoc. My ideas come and then I write something. I don't really have, I do have series or things that I have like planned for the future, but I have a lot of ideas that come kind of out of nowhere, and I just put them sort of, I say on paper, but it's really on the computer.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're mainly focused on teacher education and management, but there are a few articles and blogs in there that focus on teaching and how to make the best out of the classroom.
Interesting. And now, Marcelo, coming back to you. So you did a talk yesterday at IATEFL. What was it about?
Well, actually, it was more of a workshop, but because I want to show my like-minded colleagues what the whole thing was about acting and how to actually, you don't need to be an actor to include these type of exercises in your sessions. That the idea is that you can use adapted acting exercises and techniques into the pronunciation classroom to improve both intelligibility and expressiveness. So that's basically what we did. We divided the session in 3 key moments. First, we started with vocal warm-ups and relaxation exercises, to move then to script analysis and subtext analysis. And finally, a couple of colleagues performed the scene in front of a rest. And after that, we kind of reflected upon what the approach is about. And we came to certain conclusions.
This is wonderful. And how was the session?
Well, actually, it was fun, I think. To me, the most important thing is that people can try the exercises. I do believe in pronunciation from a more physical point of view. And actually, if we introduce that in our sessions with our own students, if teachers work at different levels, primary or secondary school, they don't actually need to know about phonology so much, but actually applying a bit of common sense, where to make pauses, which element to stress in every single utterance, and of course, activating non-verbal and paraverbal language.
Now, in my experience as an academic manager as well, I always find that teachers do refrain from teaching pronunciation, and they are quite hesitant. What do you think, Jim?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So what kind of advice can you give to our participants from home, for example, who would like to teach pronunciation and encourage it a little bit more in their students and their classes? What kind of advice, what would be the first step to them?
Well, as we've been discussing in the PronSig, in the pre-conference event, actually the first thing is to start teaching it. That our fear won't prevent us from doing so. Of course, there are plenty of materials that we can resort to. And actually trying to apply, to me at least, this is my humble view, some new approaches and not believing that the whole field is 100% technical. Of course, there's loads of terminology and there are loads of things that we need to know. But at the same time, if we apply common sense and we listen to what our students need, knowing our students' mother tongue is key, because in that way we'll be able to spot the type of mistakes, let's say, that they are likely to make, if those happen to be mistakes, and if so, try to introduce certain activities so that we can avoid one negative transfer and focus mainly on intelligibility.
And how do you feel that the students respond to pronunciation lessons?
Well, actually, I work at university, and my students at the beginning might be a bit, reluctant, yes. But I guess that if they feel their tutor, teacher, lecturer is enthusiastic, and that you try to, again, bridge the gap between that theory that happens to be sometimes a bit too technical, and you show that in real life and you use all the tools we've got today at hand, I think that eventually they kind of like it.
That's very interesting, actually. And Jim, tell us about your experience about, helping teachers. You're a teacher trainer as well.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, lovely. About teachers who can be quite shy, teaching a particular aspect, not only pronunciation, but grammar or vocabulary that they're not confident with. So, how do you help them and support them in that?
I think this ties in with the plenary from this morning, and this relates to the idea of mentoring and coaching. There is an element of building in through workshops and building the skill base or the knowledge base, and also the awareness of the need to focus on those areas. But I think if teachers are shy and reluctant to explore those areas, then we need to have that coaching or mentoring relationship there. And that means taking time to look at them, to hear their thoughts, to explore their thoughts and their experiences with, for example, teaching pronunciation, or not teaching pronunciation, and the reasons for that, and to go deeper to that. So I don't think it's a one size fits all. And I think as teacher education becomes, as the research from teacher education becomes more widespread, we've come to realize that it does need to be more individualized and personalized. And so especially with aspects like this.
Absolutely. And how do you assess progress in the teacher? So when you, for example, do a teacher training session, for example, and how do you make sure that the teachers do use the ideas and they do want to progress and improve?
You've just asked a very, very difficult question. No, but it's a difficult question because it's a good question. And my talk is talking about this tomorrow, actually. So everyone, make sure you come to my talk. Yes.
That's why I actually
yeah. So when we're trying to evaluate this idea of impact, and evaluating impact is difficult for a number of reasons. One, we don't know the variables involved. However, if we take a kind of triangulation approach to looking at these, so we're looking at getting some insights from not only the teachers themselves, so we're trying to measure that uptake, asking them some time after the workshop, what they remember from the workshop, but also looking at their lessons, perhaps having a second set of eyes and seeing if there's any evidence of them taking on those insights. But also there's the one player that we often forget, and that's learners. And so getting feedback from learners and perhaps asking specific questions to learners regarding perhaps the development goal that was trying to be focused on. So there are many ways in which we can do that. But I think that's collecting feedback from a number of different sources and working with teachers with that feedback is perhaps key.
Lovely. And now, without revealing too much about your talk tomorrow,
Of course not. No.
What are you hoping that the participants will get from your talk?
Okay, that's an easy question. Right. So the talk's going to be focusing on useful tools. There are going to be 9 useful tools, perhaps more than 9, depending on how you look at it, for identifying top-down and bottom-up needs within an organization, and evaluating efforts, basically. And we're going to look at some processes of how academic managers or teacher educators might implement these tools within their contexts. So yeah, I won't say any more than that.
Wonderful. Well, now I also want to congratulate you, and I should have started with that by congratulating you about the scholarship. So for people who might be interested in applying for the scholarship to come to IATEFL next year, what was the process like for you?
Well, actually, it was a really smooth and lovely process. I think at least the people involved in the PRONSEG are just excellent. They've been really supportive and generous. So basically, I am a member of a PRONSEG. So I got to know about this scholarship that actually has been sort of, I think, sorry, German Adam, about this, but I think it's changed into what it is today, which fosters classroom research that to me is essential in our profession. And as soon as I saw that, I said, well, why not? And I contacted German Adam and asked for more details, and they were very generous and actually helped me a great deal. And actually everything was very easy. I had to complete a couple of forms and submit my abstract and some information, and I just waited then for the result. Very easy.
And how did you feel when you first heard the news?
Well, actually, it was just after my birthday. So yeah. It was just a day after my birthday, and actually, I do remember being at home and getting the email, and actually, I felt over the moon, and I started shouting at home and jumping around, and actually, it was fantastic. Well, actually, my country is far away from from here, so it's not so easy for us to travel. Maybe if, when it comes to funds and the like. So actually, it's been really helpful.
Absolutely. Well, that was a good gift, wasn't it? The gift of knowledge.
Lovely present.
Lovely. And Jim, how was the process like for you?
For me, very similar. That's very smooth. I didn't really have any support in terms of doing it because I knew what I wanted to do. But in terms of what was needed, the tasks were very clear, and the way that it was done through the website was very easy to understand. The one thing I will say is that not many people know about these scholarships. So and they're there. And so I definitely encourage I'd encourage teachers out there to apply, but also to share the love, tell others that there are other scholarships there, because I found out about these scholarships actually from a tweet by Sandy Millen a number of years ago, and that was by chance. So please spread the word that there are scholarships out there, and they do help teachers from all around the world.
This is great advice. Thank you. Lovely. So now, before we say goodbye, have you got any future projects that you're working on?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, I'm planning to get some of these exercises published. So I hope anytime soon, because I've been working on this project for a long time. It's quite independent. So I would love to get those exercises published so the teachers can actually use them in the classroom, So that's what I'm planning to do. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, indeed. Thank you very much, Marisol. And what about you, Jim?
Interesting. Well, I'm completing my MA at the moment.
Good luck.
Oh, brilliant. Excellent. Yes. That's something to mention. Yes. So I'm doing my MA through NIL at the moment. And so I'm looking forward to completing that when I complete it. But also I've got my, it's a little secret, but I'm writing a book at the moment. Privately, okay, and then I'll approach publishers later. So if publishers are there, make sure you're listening. Yeah, so and then some other teacher education. I'd like to start some more teacher education, perhaps programs within Spain within my context, and maybe start a teacher association in my area where there isn't any. So those are the things that I've got for the future. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very, very much both for joining me today.
Tgood so much.
Good luck, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yes,
lovely.
Definitely. Will do. Thank you. Bye.
We are from Cuba. We are looking forward to meeting new people here, to exchange our experiences and to know from other experiences from teachers from our countries.
Hi, I'm Andrea. I'm here from Cambridge, and I'm looking forward to meeting a lot of people and getting to learn about the most exciting ideas in ELT this year.
Hello everyone, my name is Burcu. I'm from Turkey. This is my second time in IATEFL conferences. So the previous one was excellent. So this year, I personally would like to learn a lot about the digital enrichment in my classroom. So hope you great conference.
I'm Rachel Harris. I teach in Switzerland. I live in France, and I'm the joint coordinator of the Inclusive Practice and Special Education Needs SIG. So what I'm most looking forward to is our showcase day, which is on Wednesday in Queen Suite 7, and is filled with fantastic talks for everything to do with inclusion, special education needs, and diversity. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey. I'm a teacher from the Netherlands, where I teach English. I'm looking forward to learning more about all the things that we can learn about here. So all about teaching English, ways to improve it, and new research maybe as well. So I'm excited for today's first day. yeah, let's see what today will bring.
Morning, my name is Ineke. I'm from the Netherlands, Maastricht, which is in the south. We had a long journey getting here, but we really enjoy being here. Harrogate, first impression, very good. We're looking forward to the conference. Hope to learn a lot that we can use at practice at school. And the sun is shining, so what else is there to wish for?
Hi everyone, this is IATEFL from Egypt, and this is my second time at IATEFL. Looking forward to networking with other people, meeting new friends and old ones.
So, hi everyone, welcome back to IATEFL Live from Harrogate 2023. Unbelievably, we were already been online an hour and 25 minutes for this show. It seems to have absolutely flown by. Before we hand over to the next guest, let's go back to what Jim and Marisol were talking about, the scholarships. And Jim made a very valid point about getting the news out and letting people know. So that the website is going along the bottom of the screen now. Just to point out, if you go there, you can find out about the scholarships for next year, for April 2024. Next year's conference is in Brighton. It's about the same dates as this year, and the scholarship application date opens at the end of this month. I can't remember. It's April 28th. There you go. So if you go to that website now, you can actually find out the different guidelines for the different scholarships. There are a lot of scholarships that you could apply for. So you can go and look through those and find one that is applicable to you. So I'll leave that up for another second while I just change over the camera. So we're getting ready for the next interview. There we go. And back and then ready over there. Okay, so let's go over to Nikki and let's see who she's talking to now.
Oh, thank you very much, Sean. Hello again, everybody. I'm joined now by another one of our conference presenters. This is Shahjan Chowdhury. Welcome, lovely to see you.
Thank you.
So, Shahjan, this is your very first IATEFL conference.
Yeah, sure.
Tell us everything. How's it going?
It was first-hand experience for me to attend the international conference of IATEFL, and I got a lot of insights within 2 days. And I hope a lot of things will I get during this conference that will be very much applicable in my classrooms in Nepal, especially for the non-native students.
Absolutely. So your context, you've joined us from Nepal.
Yeah.
And you're a primary or a secondary school teacher or private language school. What's your context?
Actually, I'm the government teacher and I teach up to secondary level, 12th grades. So it is a quite challenging job for us there in Nepal, because most of the students are, from the low economic ground, and then they don't have the access of, technology and other textbooks and reference books. So.
Okay, so that's your context in Nepal. Yeah. So you're very much in the classroom working with, print material or potentially low material lessons. And what's the learners, their level roughly for the age group that you teach?
Out of all the students, I found that almost 10 to 11% students are very much inquisitive to get the knowledge of English, and they are very much enthusiastic to learn it. Because of the craziness of English is increasing day by day all around the globe. So it is quite interesting for them. And about 40% of the students are middle labeled.
Okay.
And the rest of them are very much, they have very low, qualification. They have low, very, capacity to grab the language. So it is quite challenging for us.
And on top of that, and this was the topic of your talk at the conference, in fact, you tell us. So your talk was called "Who Will Listen? I Have English Phobia."
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about what the talk was about and where it comes from, what inspired you.
Yeah, sure. Especially this is the voice of the students, backbenchers or low achievers, who don't like to learn English and who have a fear of learning and speaking English in the classroom. So I made a small survey in the classroom among 72 students, and I found that about 42% of the students, they get fear of learning or speaking English. And thereafter I implemented some ideas how to mitigate or how to minimize the level of anxiety for those students, and that works really after the implementation of the activities.
But this is very interesting, and I don't think you're alone. I think that potentially many of us have students with foreign language anxiety in the classroom. What prompted you to think, oh, maybe they do have this anxiety? Were they not talking, or was there a bad atmosphere in the classroom? How did you know? What made you think I need to do a survey to find out?
I used questionnaire,
Uh-huh.
and then with the open-ended question, and then I stopped them, and they filled up the answers, and then I calculated the data,
Mhm.
and then I found that this number of students, they like English, or they feel very much relaxed or very much interesting to learn, and then some of the numbers of students, they don't like, or some of the students they like, just like, they want to learn, but something is blocking them to learn that. They have the capacity, they have the intelligence, but they need some catalyst to explore
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
So what did you do? What strategies
Yeah.
did you come up with? How did you change the classroom or the activities to help learners that might be suffering from anxiety?
So yeah, I use several ideas. The first one is I use the language structures that provoke less fear.
Structures that
For
provoke less
example,
fear. Okay.
yeah. For example, I gave some certain structures. If I were, what would you do if I were question mark? And I made one example. If I were a bird, I would fly in the sky. So make several same sentences, 5, 10, or 15 sentences, and they make, they follow the structure, and they are out of fear, and they are very much happy to make the sentences this way.
Okay.
And another, I use board games
Board
to
games,
teach
yes.
synonyms and antonyms. Next one, I use riddles, English riddles, and they get the brainstorming for some time, and thereafter they found the answers, and finally they use the word in sentences, making different sentences from the answers. So it was quite funny and interesting for them. They participated very much interestingly. And the next one is I use short period meditation.
Okay.
Just I engage them in meditation, closing their eyes just for 1 minute.
Mhm.
Keep calm and silent, concentrate your mind, and remove the negative idea or negative concept about the English. you know uh, just like that, I can learn English if I try. you know so I use several structures to replace the negative concepts of English, and they did very nicely. And after the implementation of such activities, I found quite interesting data that 11% of the students who were actually interesting to learn English, later on it changed into 23%.
Oh, wow. So by changing the strategies that you used in the classroom, you
Yeah.
had more interest in learning English amongst the students. This is wonderful. When did you use the meditation? Were you using it at the beginning or at the end?
Yeah, in the beginning, starting the beginning, before starting the class, is a warming up. I ask the students, let's do the meditation. throw away or delay the ideas of negative concept about English. If you try, you can learn. And just close the eyes. And we have one small hymn, in our religion, in Hindu religion, and they just say Om for just a minute, and after that they feel relaxed, and their mind activated, and they were very much positive to learn English after some time.
Well, this is fantastic. This is exactly what we want the learners to feel like.
Yeah.
How were the strategies, the new ones? How was it different to the way that they'd been taught English in the past?
I didn't find anywhere the use of meditation is not implemented in the classroom. I searched everywhere. That it could be I thought that it could be one of the unique ideas to use in the classroom. So it is different from the previous one, traditional one. And other next one is games, that is traditional one. So I followed some traditional and some unique ideas to bring the changes in the concept of students, so that they can learn English easily, and they can think positively about English. So
positive thinking. What advice would you give any teachers that are thinking, oh my goodness, I wonder whether my students are suffering from foreign language anxiety? What would you say that they should do?
It's a common challenge for all of these teachers from all around the world, where English is a second language or foreign language. So I would like to say that please use this one meditation according to your tradition or according to your religion, just for a minute. It helps you to concentrate the mind of the students, and it could be very much useful to teach you in the classroom. Others traditional methods are already existed. For example, using teaching materials, ICTs are there. These things are already used, and meditation is one of the very good milestone, I think, to bring the students in the right track to learn not only in English. If you want to learn teach mathematics or science in any subjects, we can use that. I think so.
I think it's also very good advice to perhaps calm anybody who's had a busy day. Like it could be adults that are coming into class that have a lot of baggage they need to get rid of, and also maybe hyperactive teens. If you want to calm them down slightly before the lesson begins, that might be a wonderful way of doing it. Final question. What are you most looking forward to for the rest of the conference? You've got another 2 days. What are you going to do? Do you have plans?
Mostly I will attend my interested topics, and I'll make some interactions with the presenters, and I will be starting some new ideas from here that can be implemented in my classroom, in my context. I'm thinking so.
That's perfect. That's what the conference is all about.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for talking us today.
It's my great pleasure.
And all the very best.
Thank you.
Aijan, welcome to IATEFL.
Hi.
Where are you from?
I'm from Kazakhstan. I'm a member of presenter of KazayLT.
Excellent.
So we are presenting English association teacher from Kazakhstan. It's like first Kazakh English teacher association in our country. We are so happy to presenting it here.
And we are happy to have you here, so welcome. Now, Aijan, are you ready for the spin the wheel?
Yeah.
Lovely, so spin the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Just a second. And read the question to us.
Okay, what's your teaching pet hate? It's about my...
So something that you don't like seeing in teaching,
okay.
but you enjoy talking about it because it's so annoying.
Okay. Sometimes it's when you're doing a reading Yeah, for a student, they are sometimes boring and they're doing something and other things, but we have to do it because reading is very important part of in English, in learning of English, because I think it's a little bit hard seeing that your students are boring, but I'm trying to make interesting some things like digital collaborations to do it more interesting. Yeah, I see. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And we are almost at the end of today's live show. We've got one more interview left. And it's an interview which I do give a big sigh of relief because we booked him in for an interview last year and he completely forgot that he was doing it. So it's quite good that he's turned up this year. Full disclosure that I know him because we make a podcast together. And remember that after we finish today with the live stream, we will be putting the plenary on at about 5:30. So in about 50 minutes from now, the plenary will go live. But let's go to the final interview of the day. Over to Anka, who is with James. Over to you, Anka.
Hi, and welcome, and thank you, James, for talking to us.
Thank you, Anka. It's lovely to be here.
It is still, but I've got some questions for you.
Okay.
And we'll see what you say after that.
I'm sure I'll have a lovely time.
For the people that don't know you, could you quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is James Taylor. I'm a teacher, materials writer. Spent most of my career in Brazil. I've just recently moved to New York. And I'm I'm a joint coordinator of the TDSIC.
That is new news, isn't it?
That is brand new news. Yeah, I think I'm the joint coordinator.
You think?
It's around now that I'm becoming that. Yes.
How does it feel to say it out loud?
It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's nice. I'm joint coordinator, I should say, of course, with Cecilia Lemos, and we're just taking over now. We've both been on the committee for a few years. And so now we're taking over the coordination together, and we're really looking forward to it. We've got a lot of plans, and we're going to do some exciting, cool stuff.
Any spoilers, since we have the exclusive on this news anyway?
Well, sure.
Any spoilers of your plans?
No, I mean, our first priority is to really get with our projects that we've been doing over the years, to really get those in the second half of this year, to get those going. So we'll have our journal published. We'll do our web conference that we do every year, the Web Carnival. We'll keep doing our podcasts that we do, and we have our TD Live events, which we've just started doing as an online sort of community event, which we'll continue to do. And we're going to be very busy, very active, and I can't wait.
Very cool. So if you haven't joined the TDSIC, this is your time to do it.
Wise words.
Now, you're not just the joint coordinator. Now, I like saying it as well. You're not just a joint coordinator.
Yeah.
You're also here because you're speaking
I am,
tomorrow.
Yes.
Could you tell me a bit about your session?
Sure. So my main interest is in materials writing, but I'm always very interested in if you look at the books that were published over there nowadays, almost all of them will be based around sort of a topic-based syllabus, right? So we have obviously the language content of the books, but then each lesson will have a topic, which is, and usually we all know those topics of like travel and
food,
family and friendship, and all those kind of things, right? So I'm always really interested in what we do with those topics as part of the lesson. So over the last few years, kind of all of my talks have been related to that. So I've spoke about fake news. I've spoken about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Last year, I spoke about the climate crisis. And this year, I'm talking about something related to that, which is like how we deal with kind of science and what I'm going to call like science-y sort of topics in our materials. So how do we write about those? And the reason that's interesting to me is because that's the area where we kind of need the most rigor. It's evidence-based topics. And I think that perhaps we're not always the best at treating those topics with the kind of rigor that they need.
Any spoilers for the people who somehow are still doubting to come to your session?
Well, that was a bit of a spoiler already. But
more rigor.
But no, I'm going to look at some sort of... the idea of the talk is I'm sort of look at some examples of different topics of this type and think about sort of hypothetically, I'm going to ask the audience to consider, do you think that these activities that I'm going to suggest, would they be published or not? Would an editor sort of say, yeah, I don't think we can do this because this is not what the science tells us? And what I think is interesting is that I think there are some subjects which are kind of more obvious where people say, well, no, you couldn't say that.
Yeah.
But then there are other subjects which maybe would get through, but they're both kind of equally as sort of non-evidence based as each other.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think about why would it work with this topic and not with this topic?
Oh, sounds very interactive. Which one would make it? What could you use?
Yeah.
Very cool. I wanna go.
You're more than welcome. Tomorrow morning about 10:30, I think. So
Good.
yeah.
And for the people who can't make it,
Yeah.
because they're at home and not
course.
attending this year,
Yeah.
Any topics that they should incorporate in their classes?
Wow.
Any good topics? Any other tips, perhaps?
Well, if you're talking about science, these kind of science and science-related topics, then I mean, I think that these are really good topics to include, but it's all about the approach to them, right?
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example of a course book series that I wrote for, where I did a lesson which was about, it wasn't about conspiracy theories, it was about conspiratorial thinking, right?
Yeah.
Because conspiracy theories, as a general rule, are pretty much all nonsense. And we're educators, right? So we shouldn't be letting nonsense into our classrooms.
Ideally,
so,
no.
Yeah. So my what I tried to do with that lesson was, let's have a look at why is it that people believe these conspiracy theories, not what conspiracy theories do you know, right? That's not what I wanted to discuss.
No.
That what I want the students to talk about. I want to talk, why is it that people sort of fall into this trap of conspiratorial thinking? And so it was a very sort of, and it was for 12-year-olds, this class, you see. So it was very like carefully constructed. So I thought it was a very interesting sort of exercise in critical thinking and, you know, and a literacy, right? A sort of literacy of understanding how information works. And this is what I find really interesting, right? Because I was saying, you know, we can do these things while learning a language.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that to me is really interesting. And I feel like, obviously we talk about the language bit a lot, as we should, but perhaps we don't think enough about what we can do in that other space that's available there, because we are doing something's happening, you know, even in the most boring lesson. Something's happening there.
You always need a topic. You always have other skills that come up.
Well, the thing is, like, it traditionally hasn't always been that way, right? It's fairly recent that has been the sort of normal, what's seen as like the normal approach. But in the past, I mean, I was you know, fairly recently doing Portuguese lessons, and they weren't really sort of topic based. The books that I was using, they were a little bit, but it was very sort of generic and mostly, you know, you would see that was language first, where as opposed to like topic first.
Has learning a new language helped you with looking at how we teach English?
Oh yeah. I mean, for good and for bad, in the sense that maybe one of the best training courses I ever did in teaching was when I had Portuguese lessons with a really bad teacher. And all those things they tell you not to do when you're doing yourself and everything, he made us do them. And then I was like, oh yeah, now I get it, right? You know, it wasn't just theory. I was like reading aloud and doing this kind of stuff and taking turns to read and everything. And then when I was doing, I was like, oh yeah, this is like, no, there's no doubt I really can't do this. So that was, I got more out of it from that point of view than I did from like learning from great teachers, to be honest with you. Unfortunately, that was my experience, but it was very valuable. And as a process, you know, going through that process of learning a language, it's hard. I'm not someone who found it easy at all. It was really hard for me. And so I understand how my students feel.
Does help with empathy.
Absolutely.
And bad examples inspire just as much as the good ones.
Yeah, and it may be cheaper than doing like a regular course.
could be. Assuming that quality and money are sort of in balance.
Exactly, yes.
Now, yesterday we had a guest in the studio, Taisa Lombardi. You probably know her from the Raise Up.
I do. I know Taisa very well.
Program. You do. You would know that very well. Could you tell me a bit about it?
So, Taisa's, I mean, for two reasons, because also she won the TDC scholarship this year as well.
Yeah.
So, but her presentation was about a project that I started with my colleague Ila Coimbra, where we decided that one of the the obvious issues of the day, which is the diversity, equity, and inclusion, that the representation of many social groups and identities was unlikely to be sort of solved by ELT publishing materials anytime soon. So then we decided that we would just do it ourselves and create materials which were genuinely inclusive, just independently.
Yeah.
So we wrote the first book together and published it. It's a self-published project. And then after we did the first book, we invited collaborators. And so we started to invite people to write lessons and to editors, proofreaders, illustrators, to help us put these lessons together. So it turns from being just sort of like a project for the two of us to becoming, now I think we've had sort of 40 people or something involved across all these different areas. Yeah. So we've so Taisy was one of our contributors because her speciality is that she's taught many older learners.
Yeah.
So she was very passionate about doing a lesson for them because she felt as a teacher that she didn't really have materials that worked, right? For that age group. So that's how she contributed. But she's one of many people who've had their own thing and say, oh, I want to do a lesson about this because this is something I care about. I would love to see a lesson like this exist. So then that's the people we speak to, and we match them up with an editor because often they don't have a lot of experience. So it's their first experience of actually doing writing published materials. So we match them up with an experienced editor. So it's like a mentoring program as well for them. And then we put the whole thing together into a book which is available to buy. All the money goes to charity. Everyone is a volunteer, and so so we've so far published 3 books: the multi-level one, the first one we did, and then B1 and B2. We've been on a hiatus for the last year or so, but then we'll come back soon and we'll do our A1 and A2 books, which will be published sometime this year, beginning of next year, maybe.
Brilliant.
So it's a project I'm very passionate about and very proud of, and I would hope that more people will get involved and take the opportunity to work with us in the future because we're open to everybody.
Okay, that's very good to know. More opportunities today. It's very much about
Absolutely.
sweets and opportunities today.
Oh yeah, I got on the sweets as well.
So anyone want to be or do more with material writing, this sounds like a really good opportunity to be both mentored and to get attention for a specific topic or a specific point of view.
Yeah, and I just mentioned that some, the topics we concentrate on, like there's the kind of the ones you say like obvious topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion, things like LGBTQIA+, race, gender, but then we also look at, we also invite lessons about, say, people who live in rural areas, low-paid workers, people with disabilities, lots of different areas that we feel are not poorly represented or not represented at all.
I can imagine there's loads. If you really critically look at the materials we use, there's so many categories not represented that you don't realize maybe until you are confronted with the fact that they're not. Any big surprises over the past couple of books where you said, wow, I didn't realize this was so much an underrepresented topic?
Well, one that was very interesting to me actually was we wrote an article for Voices, IATEFL Voices, about the project, and David Crystal got in touch with us, which was pretty cool to get an email from out of nowhere, and he asked us about why we hadn't included religious representation, and it hadn't really occurred to us because neither of us are religious people. And we said, well, yeah, it is true that you don't in course books see, and it's not lessons about religion, but it's just having representation of that in materials. So I was like, well, yeah, that's a good point. So we did a lesson. Ila wrote a lesson about where it looked at different faiths around the world and so on, and it was really interesting sort of to go through that process because it hadn't occurred to us at all. And then when we got the email from David, we were like, Yeah,
Good
that's true.
point,
You
yeah.
wouldn't, you don't see people with like visible, like in pictures, for example, visible signs of their religion, which is very common around the world. So,
Yeah, and I think it's very important that it's not always a topic, but it's also representation in terms of just
Yeah.
visually, in
Yeah.
terms of examples.
well, this is the easiest way to sort of achieve visibility for these groups, is to like just put pictures in the book of
Yeah.
add pictures of those people into the books, right? But I mean, that's not enough, we would say, but it's a start. It's the easiest thing a teacher can do, for example, to amend a course book they've got that they're not very happy with.
Yeah.
Is that they can then sort of go, okay, I'm going to change this pictures here, and I'm going to make a slide, and same activity but with just different faces, and that is a very easy thing that teachers can do. But obviously we need to do a lot more than that, and we need to have lessons where these people have they have agency.
Yeah.
They're not just like passively in the background of a lesson, but it's actually their voice that we allow. We don't have people even speaking on their behalf, but they're speaking for themselves, telling their own stories.
Yeah.
So it's a sort of project that I think everyone involved in it has learned a lot as we've gone on.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm very proud of it. And I'd like people to buy it because all the money goes to charity, as I said, just to reiterate.
What charity?
There's 3 charities that we've got. So there's Casa in Sao Paulo, which is a refuge for vulnerable people. Las Patronas in Mexico, where they provide food for people who are crossing borders on the trains, who often don't eat for days without the support. And then for Lifting Hands, which is a refugee support charity in Greece.
Very good. Very noble, and definitely something I'd want to do.
Well-
So sell it to me. Like what does, other than that it's inclusive,
Mhm.
what else is good about the book? Why should I ditch my course materials? And
You
go
shouldn't
for this
ditch your course materials, because it doesn't replace an entire syllabus, right? So each book's got 8 lessons in it, but I would say they're lessons that can supplement ones that you're already doing. So you can use them to replace a lesson if you're not particularly happy with that one, or you can use it if they need an extra lesson on that particular language point that is covered, then you could use it for that level, to supplement. The sort of the purpose of the book was to create these lessons that teachers could use, right? And they're good lessons that can be used. They're very accessible in terms of anyone can teach with these, because the syllabus, the activities and everything are deliberately designed to reflect like mainstream ELT materials. So it's not supposed to be like innovative in terms of methodology, because that's the point for us, is that what we're trying to say is that it isn't impossible. It's quite possible to have like very normal international mainstream ELT materials that do a much better job of being inclusive.
Yeah.
You don't have to be radical in order to do this, right?
No.
So the materials are very accessible, anyone can use them, but they also serve the purpose of, as I said, showing how this is possible. So if you're someone who's interested in writing materials, creating materials, publishing them, editing, whatever you do, you can get the books and look at it and see how we've done it as an example of
And then
saying,
if
look,
they
yeah, this can be done, right?
like it, they can contact you and they can be in on the next book.
They can, or they can hire me to write their books.
That's also very interesting.
That would be nice. But yeah, so they and of course there's a campaigning element to it as well, right?
Yeah.
So we want to put pressure on on our profession to respond to what we're doing, and for it to affect the practice of writers and editors and publishers around the world.
I love that.
Yeah, so
Set
it's got
the
the sort of
tone.
three
Yeah.
pronged attack.
No, but it is. It sets a tone. It challenges others to start thinking about it, and at the same time, for teachers, it's
Yeah.
I assume ready-made, photocopyable kind of materials, extra supplemented lessons that you can use in your classes.
Yeah, so they provide the extra supplement, and that comes with teachers' notes, and so there's some. In the last book we had listening lessons with audio. So every time we do one, we kind of expand on it and what we're able to offer. I mean, we did one with the last one we published was during the pandemic, so we created like a PowerPoint version that teachers could use for teaching online.
Yeah.
Or we kind of add more to the package each time we do it. So yeah.
Brilliant. So go check them out. And
Can I mention the website?
You can mention the website, yes. And whenever possible, Sean will actually put it in on the screen or in the chat or somewhere.
Yeah, so raiseupforelt.com. It's the website.
Raiseupforelt.com.
Yeah, raise up, FOR. Raise, not rise. Everyone makes that mistake. Raise
Sorry.
up. No, you didn't. You didn't.
Oh.
But raise up
Oh,
for
I didn't.
ELT.com. So, yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Now you write the course materials. You're now the joint coordinator for the TD-SIG.
Yeah.
You work in Brazil. Would love to talk more about that.
Sure.
You also do a podcast.
A few podcasts, yes.
A few podcasts even. You're a very busy man.
Yeah, I know. I need to start to learn to say no to things, don't I?
Well, I'm really glad you didn't start when we invited you for the
No,
interview.
of course not, no. Yeah.
But what's your favorite job? Out of all the jobs, what's the favorite one?
Oh, wow. The favorite? No, I mean, I want to say I like them all for different reasons. You know, it's everything. I really like writing. You know, I really like sitting down with the blank page and then ending up with that point later on where you've got that lesson which all sort of coheres. That moment where it kind of clicks and you're like, yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
It's really satisfying. I haven't been teaching for a while, so at some point I'm sure I'll probably miss that because I do love to be a teacher. But I would say, yeah, for now I'll go with the writing.
Very good answer. I completely understand, even though I see Sean crying in a corner, that you're not actually mentioning the podcast with him as your favorite.
The TEFL Commute podcasts that I do with Sean. Yes, that podcast you mean? The TEFL
That should
Commute.
have been. That would have been apparently the perfect answer.
So
but,
when I do that podcast, I have to listen to Sean for like 40 minutes,
and then
talking in my ears. So I'll let you figure out whether that's my favorite job or not.
I think he's doing the same now, but
Payback.
payback. No, but material writing, I love it. For the people back home, to wrap this up,
Yes.
for the people back home who want to do more with material writing or
Yeah.
are beginning material writers,
Yeah.
any good tips for them to get into it?
Well, here's something you didn't mention. I'm also the leader of the materials writing SIG for Brasitiso in Brazil, and this is like, yeah, I know.
Another job. Okay.
Yeah, and occasionally I get paid to do things. And
that must be nice.
yeah, and this is the main thing that comes up, right? Is people saying, "How do I get into it?"
Yeah.
And it's not an easy question to answer because there isn't like a linear path. You know, you go apply for this and then do this, and you know, if you speak to materials writers, everyone got into it in different ways. My own story is doing a presentation at a conference, and there were literally like 12 people in the audience, so it wasn't like a great attendance. But one of them was from a publisher, and she liked what I did, and then spoke to me and said, "Would you be interested in writing for this course book series that we're planning?" And then I ended up doing the whole series, co-authoring that. So that's, you know, but the lesson from that is, you know, you've kind of got to be visible, be out there doing stuff. You've got to be available. It's kind of difficult to move into materials writing if you're a full-time teacher, for example, right? Because it's difficult to get that balance. But you know, so at some point you might have to like take a jump into the unknown and say, I want to do this. But I think the best thing you can do is start, right? Start without waiting for someone to give you permission. Just start doing it anyway. So start writing your own lessons that you use, give them to your colleagues, create a blog. People still do that. I know some people think it's very old fashioned, but you can't do it on Instagram like you can. Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's very dormant, but it's
That
still there.
too. He also has a blog.
I don't publish on the blog, so for a long time. So, you know, because of the other things. But yeah, so it's start doing it, try and you know, share them with people, get them out there, tell people that you're doing them, and then that's a start. And then get involved with events like this. You know, IATEFL has a MORSIG. Go to their events, become a regular, speak to people, and look for those opportunities. You know, like you have to be fairly relentless and sort of keep digging and keep trying.
So keep trying, be visible, talk about it, and come to IATEFL.
Always, that's
good.
always the answer to any question.
Good tip. Thank you. And thank you for the interview.
No, it was lovely to be here. Thank you very much.
listening to me for 40 minutes in his ears. I mean, what could give him more pleasure than that? Thanks, James, and thank you for turning up and closing our show today. That's it. The live show of day 2 has come to an end. We hope you have enjoyed all the interviews we've brought to you today. That means we're about halfway through IATEFL. There's 2 more shows left. We'll be back tomorrow with day 3. In 26 minutes on the social media platform in which you're watching this, you will be able to access today's plenary. And just to remind you, if you don't know what it is, the plenary this morning was called Lean On Me, Stories of Coaching, Mentoring and Teacher Resilience. And while I've only seen bits of it, I am told overall it was absolutely amazing. So hopefully you will enjoy that. And after the plenaries, we will have some pre-recorded stuff, so you'll be able to listen to an interview with Rachel Roberts, and then listen to some of the people that we've interviewed at conference before the live shows took place today. So I think marking your card, it's 5:30 to about 6:30 UK time is the plenary. 7:30 is the interview with Rachel Roberts, and then between 8 and 9 o'clock there are some small interviews going out. And of course, we will be back here tomorrow live from the exhibition in Harrogate. It's quite interesting how the exhibition's going. This time of the exhibition is coming to an end, so you can see that the teddy bear is kind of stuck there on its own on that table. But we'll see if it's got some friends tomorrow. Goodbye for now. Hope you have a good rest of the day. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all your comments, and we'll speak to you again soon.